Welcome back everyone to the Rathalos tutorial, and today we are going to be collapsing the crease pattern. So here we have our paper. If you missed the first video, I taught how to pre-crease everything. And so if you missed it or if you decide to skip it, just make sure that you have your paper all ready in the grid with the pre-creases to be ready to go. All right, let's get collapsing. And the first step is something that I pretty much do with all of my box pleated tutorials. And we're going to fold it into a vertical stick. So this paper is orientated just like the crease pattern over here. And you're going to take the grid lines from the edges and pleat them all together. So mountain, valley, and make sure it is, again, we're doing this vertically. So the legs are down here, the arms and the head are up here. And we are pleating inwards like that. So I'm going to go ahead and pleat mine, and we'll come back when it's a stick. And today's video is brought to you by me with the OBB membership. Meet Kai, who just folded Satoshi Kamiya's Region 2.1, but like many of you, struggled to solve certain parts like the head and couldn't find anywhere for help. That is until he joined OBB membership, where he got a direct line of help from me and I pointed him in the right direction to finish. Just look how happy he is and how cool that region turned out. I've been responding to every comment for years, but the OBB membership lets me help with more specific origami questions. You can even get help from other talented OBB members, some who are award-winning origami designers. Even more benefits await, such as exclusive crease patterns, behind-the-scenes content, and diagram testing. Ready to tackle your own origami goals? Click the join button below and become a member today. All right, so here we have the stick, the pleated stick that we made. And again, our head is up here and our legs are down below. And it is very long, so okay, there you go. Our legs are down here. And we're going to start by collapsing the legs. From what we can see in the crease pattern, the legs are kind of their own section. So it's a little bit easy to just collapse all of this at once, and then we can go for the torso and upwards. This model doesn't have any level shifters through the torso, so we don't have to start in the middle, which is awesome. Everything is very straightforward, and we can kind of go bottom up. Another part that makes this design kind of fun to fold. So once again, just like with pre-creasing, we're going to start on the left side corner for the leg. It's the left corner, but this is the right leg. Okay, so here we are. And we are just going to follow basically the pre-creases we made up. And for now, we're going to skip all of these like extra sections. I think we're going to skip all of them for the whole model first and fold them in later. That'll be a good order to do things. But yeah, let me angle the crease pattern like this because we can kind of do a few things at once. So again, this design also doesn't have a complicated central area. It's multiple flaps. So the collapse is actually very simple. We can treat it like a full Elias stretch. And actually, I have mine flipped upside down. So that was the head. My legs are down here. Okay. So these are my legs right here. And we can start, and yeah, we can treat it like one giant Elias stretch, especially since we're skipping the weird stuff in the middle. So actually, let me zoom out. What we're going to be doing is, I guess we can actually do both legs at the same time. So between this leg here and this leg here, we have our grid unit that can actually fold all the way across. So here we go. I'm just going to be folding the grid line all the way across to the other leg, which is right here. It's off screen. It's right here. Here we go. So this is very long, but as we pleat upwards, it's going to get shorter and shorter. So what we can basically do is, just like we folded the horizontal grid units to make it into a stick, we are essentially now folding the vertical ones, but just tracing the structure of our pre-creases from the sides, and that's what collapses the space. Right, so we have more pre-creases on this leg here. Folds up. Same thing here. Right here. And this goes up 4 units before going outwards. So that is right here. I can see it on mine where my pre-creases start to change. So a lot of it is actually just folding the grid up. There it is on the other side. It's now starting to go out to the side there. And what you can probably do is just do a lot of the pleats in the middle and then just fix them on the opposite sides. So I'm just going to do like 2 or 3 in the middle and then resolve the sides. So it kind of gives a bit of a base for the paper's memory to act on. That's a little bit easier. So I'm pushing up this way. Now I'm going to work on the left leg. And now my pre-creases are going back outwards like this. Keep going. This one is 3 units long. So that's 1, 2, 3. And then it comes back up to the right. So we have this flap that's created right there. And it keeps going up until here, and then it goes down again right here. So this will be another flap. So we can fold this in together to here, but then it comes back down into a flap. Right there. And then this one has part of, that goes 1 more actually. This one also goes 3 units down. And then it's a zigzag. So 1 more here. Like that. And then it's a 1 unit zigzag over here. So this comes back out other way. Like this, right? So all the zigzags will make these 1 unit flaps. And now we can go up. So I'm going to rotate my paper back so we can see like this. Right now we have a huge stretch going back up to here. There you go. So that's the right side. Now I can do the same thing on the left. So we have flaps going out to here, 3 units. There you go. Something like that. And then it goes to here and then it drops down. So to there and then it drops down. And I like to rotate my paper so it's a little bit easier to find the creases. There it goes. And it goes 3 units as well. 1, 2, 3. Right here. Then we have the zigzags. So if you're having trouble collapsing this because you've never done something like this before, the easiest way to get the paper to obey your pre-creases is by folding the grid units. So as you can see, like I'm primarily just folding the grid units, then looking for my pre-creases, and then folding along my pre-creases using the grid to essentially let it pop into place. And that's how it's very smoothly collapsing. And once you get the hang of it once, it's something that's pretty easy to just repeat the whole time. Okay, so I'm going to flip it back to this way. And this is where we have the stretch going up to here. And then it comes back down, and this is where our paper is almost going to meet each other. So I'm going to rotate it again just to make it a little bit easier to see. I'm going to work on this side first. Again, just folding my grid and then stretching until I see where the creases go. It goes this way and then back, down, and out. So there's a flap that's created here. So that is, this section is what we're doing. So here and here, and then it goes like this. So in order to do this one, our paper is going to start to like fold in half this way basically, and it's going to push a mountain fold right there through some of these layers. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to undo some of these layers ahead of time, just so I can see it's here. I'm going to fold to collapse. That's where our pre-crease is. And I can pretty much unfold these pleats until I hit the next ridge, which is here. We can start collapsing. Just like this. And now this mountain fold doesn't really want to stay because we don't have it set on the other side yet. So like low key, let's keep collapsing both sides. And once it's ready, then we can just get that here. So on this side, it's right here. Like this. Just gonna elongate some of the pleats until it hits around here. There you go. So now we see that point right there. Collapse down, but we need to make sure the pleat is folded first, like this. And then you can see that this mountain fold, which will form on top of this ridge here, on both sides. See it right there? So it's going to be here. Same thing on the other side. And I guess to keep it easy for now, I'm just going to fold these pleats together like this. That's going to change. I just want to lock in that flap. Like this. So now that it's collapsed, I can kind of grab it squeeze it down so it's flat, just like that. Now we can do the rest of this. So we can open it up a little bit again, and this is basically 2 3-unit flaps that are next to each other. So I'm going to find my pre-creases. Goes up to here and then comes back on itself. And it comes back on itself and goes out again and meets up with the other side. So that means this folds in, and it's like another Elias stretch just in the very center. Like that. And in order for it to lay flat, the inside, let me bend it so you can see. All right, so these layers that are folded up will be inside here. And essentially 2 valley folds are gonna form as hinges for these to fold up together like that. And then you just want to let it collapse down, and some of my paper got stuck, so I'm going to make it a little bit cleaner. There we have it. So we have our 2 flaps here. This could be a little bit cleaner, but got these 2 flaps. We got this one here. And we are looking pretty good. Again, we have more flaps to extract here, here, and then in between these areas, but we are going to do that afterwards. So that is the whole bottom leg section area. So you can kind of see, like, we actually have a lot of room. These are for armor. This is the foot. This is another armor. A lot of room for armor. And our model is going to be about this tall to the legs. So it's really going to shrink down a bit. But yeah, so next up, we're going to do the torso. All right, so we have the legs done. Now we're moving on to the torso. So if we look at the torso here, we can actually fold this one side at a time now that it's back up in the stick. And basically everywhere we see one of these flaps, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, we're just going to be making mountain valley folds where those are. And that will keep the other side in place while we collapse. So what I'm going to look for is actually those pre-creases, which there'll be a few layers deep on each side. So if I open up very gently here, I can start finding, like, here's 1, 2, that's the top ones, and then the bottom ones over here. So there's 1, 2, and then 3, 4 up there. So at least for the first 2, what I want to do is do a mountain fold. So now that I found them, I can tell you how to do it. So we have this flap here, and you're going to go 2 units up from the hinge and make a mountain fold through those layers. Now, if you're using thick paper, then don't do this. It might break your paper. But and then valley fold down, and then we have one more. So same thing. We're going to do a mountain valley, just like this. Then we have to skip a unit and then do a valley on the next one, like this. And this is where it's getting a little bit thicker. And then one more. And this doesn't have to, like, stay flat. We just want the paper to have memory like this. So now when we collapse it out, the other side should stay put like this and let us have these pleats. So now that we have that, we can open up the layers. Again, I'm starting on the left side and look for these pre-creases. We're going to start from the bottom of it. So here we have, here we go. We found it, right? And now we are going to want to collapse these together. Now, in the way this is done, your grid, if you did your grid like mine, the horizontal ones are going to have to be inverted as you collapse this. I'm going to start with this one for our first ridge right here. And if you look at the full crease pattern in this section, you'll see that we're just following this. Right, so this is the one we just made mountain, and then it goes mountain valley upwards through here. Maybe I should have this available. Right, so for the most part, the valley ones will kind of happen on their own. We just need to make the mountains creased. So I'm going to make mountain creased here. And essentially, once I do that, it'll let me collapse this together. Well, at least hopefully it does. Might have to pop some of the pre-creases into place a little bit to get it to obey. Get that mountain fold a little bit more defined along our pre-crease. Okay, there you go. So that's one. And we have our next one over here. And I think if your paper is a little too thick, the other side won't want to stay too much, but that's all right. So here, now we're collapsing both sides, and I'm basically just looking for my pre-creases. So on this far side, we also have these zigzags going on. And then it basically just goes up to the top here. And here's my next set of zigzags on this side. Again, just following my pre-creases. Which means I just need to make this one a mountain. And we basically have all of the creases done. So now we can collapse it. And if it's not wanting to lay flat because of the thickness, I think that's okay. You're just going to want to at least see how I'm just like collapsing one portion at a time. And I'm letting the other set. It'll fit together once we do both sides, but in this way, this kind of helps lock in one side. All right, so now I've got these two flaps. I've done it on the bottom two as well, even though it's a little bit janky at the moment, but it's like kind of in place. All right, so now when we complete the other side and the layers are a little bit thinner, it's going to want to come together a lot more easily. But it's pretty much collapsing in right. So when you see this on the inside, this is just areas your paper is getting stuck. So feel free to just make that a little bit cleaner. Let's go ahead and do the other side now. And because we have one side done already, the second side is generally easier. You already have that side kind of set, and you have some practice with the creases already. So I found my pre-creases here. This is for the first layer. And then that means here's the crease I need to make mountain. There we go. Now we have our next one. Just right here. And let me scoot the crease pattern over. We just did this one. Next is this one right here. Like that. and then goes upward. Then we have one over here, and this to me is really feeling like it's almost automatically clicking into place now that we have both sides being completed. And so we just have one more layer up here that will collapse together. And now that the central flaps are thinner in layers, make sure that the creases are pretty good together, a little bit cleaner than what they had previously been. So I can hold this out of the way and kind of squish down, make sure everything else is aligned correctly. Like this. So we have our other two flaps down here. That's good. Like that. All the hinges are in the correct spot. Like this. And then with these individual flaps, these mountain valleys, you want to make sure they can both mountain valley each way and that they are solid like this too. That will help you keep your layers together. Just like that. This one can fold here at the waist. All right. Just like that. And we have the legs and the torso done, which is basically half of the crease pattern, right? So next up we have the head and the arms. This is going to be a little bit more challenging just because there's a lot going on. But we're going to start with the arm. This shield arm. And remember, if you didn't watch the video, in the pre-creasing, we treated this area as just having a mountain fold going through the whole thing. We're going to start collapsing it like that. And then the pre-crease, I did show how to basically collapse this area, which was to get the pre-creasing. We're going to worry about that later. We're going to just treat it as a regular flap, and then we'll do the transition units later. And that should keep it pretty easy. But let's go ahead and start with that. All right, so we're going to continue, again, starting from the corner. And with the ridge, I can just start by pleating on the grid. Start from the corner. Again, we're skipping the transition units till later. So this should start pretty easy. We're just going to collapse down to here where we see our first zigzag out. And if you're wondering what's going to happen to the left side, we'll deal with that in a little bit. It's going to be collapsing the head. But let's just get this started so that we don't get confused. So it starts to go out here. All right, like this. Comes back around. And then this section goes up. And then it comes back down. Like that. We can keep collapsing, and then we get to the second part of the hand. But let's start on this side. So over here, we have creases for this section. And so we'll be collapsing along this side. We're going to skip all these diamonds in the middle and just fold these ridges out. And so what we may need to do is, just like before on the legs where we held all the layers together and then like pleated them together, we might do that on this side just to keep things easy. But here we have this transition unit. It actually has like little funky 1 unit flap up top here. So just trace your pre-creases correctly. Right, it should come down, up, down, and then it will go back in on itself on the second pleat here. And it'll go towards the center. And then once we are here, we can see a bunch of these zigzags. So for now, we're going to fold those zigzags with holding the pleats together on the far side, like that. Right, so with these structures, the only way to collapse it is to pleat the other side. And it's kind of thick, so it might not want to hold too much, but and if it doesn't hold too much, just undo some of these layers to make it a little bit thinner. It should be okay, or just leave it like what I would call ghost collapsed, where like it has the memory of being collapsed, but it's not staying. And that should be enough for now too, until we can get to the other side. Just like this. Another one. All right, and since we got some progress over there, we can work back on the hand. So it's going to collapse down. You can see that these are used for the sword. And then we have part of the arm that comes back up this way. Here, so I'm following these pre-creases. I went down, I'm going back up and zigzagging this way, and I am skipping all the diamonds on the edge because we don't need to do that yet. We can do that later. All right, collapses back this way. When it collapses this way, I just hold the flap and turn it, and then it goes back down towards the body. And so that was a lot of structures. This is the sword, whole sword. This is like the handle, and then this is the hand to hold it. There's quite a lot going around and a lot going on with the hand. All right. And now when we're getting to here, it doesn't end like this. It collapses. If you look down, it actually translates out this way for like a big flap here, then a flap over here, and then it goes back up. So look for those creases on this side, which is right here. And when you activate one side, we should be able to collapse on the other. So here, it's going this way. We have our next one here. And this is for one of these flaps. This one's the longer one. So I'm going to pinch it with all the layers behind in order to collapse this. That will let me, see how it lets me collapse all the way to the hinge on the other side. And then once I have it held down, I can work on the right side and find my pre-creases, which goes out this way. Like that. And then we have zigzags here. So that's one of the zigzags. And then the next zigzag we'll have to do after we start on this flap, which goes this way. And then we can collapse the second zigzag like that. And that lets us complete the hinge on the flap. but we need to get this mountain folded. Again, I'm folding through the layers on this side temporarily, just so I can collapse like that. And then now here we have where it terminates and it connects to the other side. And we just kind of have to now gather everything here, make sure it's stretched correctly, and then get it to collapse down. The key thing is making it stretch correctly. So if you notice how on mine it's kind of bunching, we don't want it to bunch. We want full use of all those flaps. So I'm pulling outwards a little bit in order for everything to go together. And again, this top part's going to be a little bit messy until we get the other side done. But this was one side like this. Now we're going to flip over. See, we have all these layers bunched together, and we're going to start on the left hand. So for the left hand, we're going to look at the crease pattern really quick. If I zoom in, right, we have this structure. That's where we're going to start. And then we have the hand. Again, we're skipping the outside diamonds. It's just going to collapse like this. And then for the shield, we're going to skip the transition units for now. So it's just going to be like a 2x2 zigzag all the way down. And then the rest is kind of the same as we did with the head. So it's not as tricky as the crease pattern seems. So we can get started. So again, very similarly, we're going to open the layers, start folding on our grid lines. And here we see our first pre-crease, which goes out to this edge. It just kind of starts here instead of at the corner. And then we can start collapsing down. This part is actually going to be the bottom of the shield. So that's why it's kind of strange like that. But you'll see when we get to shaping. And I'm going to collapse these pleats to the other side. And let's get a few more done before I work on the other side. So from here, we're going down a little bit until we see this point, which then it goes out to the hand. So we can collapse all this. Now it's going towards the hand. And once again, we're just folding these zigzags. We're skipping the edge diamonds, which I don't think I even had you pre-crease. So there's 1, 2, and I think before we go further on, we're going to start collapsing towards the head. So we have all these pleats done now. So we can look towards the head, kind of line up with the other side. Remember, this started in the center, and then it had an additional flap on the edge here. So we're going to find that pre-crease. It's right here. Make sure you don't skip that. That'll throw you off. Okay, so we have this 1 unit flap collapsed. Make sure we have it still on both sides. So as we're folding, some of this stuff on the other side might have unfolded. So make sure both sides are good to go. Next, we're going to start folding down on our head, where very quickly it will reach our zigzags. There we go. And here we have the start of our zigzags. So just making that a little bit cleaner. Just fold the grid line first. And then line it up with the pre-crease for the zigzag. And if you get both of them, it'll feel like way thinner now. And you'll be able to squeeze both sides here for the zigzag. And then same thing with the next one. So let's get the grid line stretched out. and then it's coming upwards to here, but we have this mountain fold and this mountain fold to make it another 1 unit flap here. And you can see on the other side where we had it partially collapsed, we get both of those. Now let's just squeeze the top here, and now we have 2 flaps. And we keep going for the next one. Stretch that out. It's stuck in there, so I have to pull this up a little bit. Find the pre-creased lines in there. Find it on the other side too. And then with both of them active, makes it easier for it to turn into the 1 unit flap. We just have a few more of these. I think just one more actually. That makes it easy. So we started on that side. We just need to get it on this side now. Like this. Okay. There it is. I think that's the last one. And yeah, we can see our pre-creases now going down this way. So we've done all the zigzags, which is like the more dexterous part of the head. And now, because we've done a lot of that, we can probably return to collapsing more of the arm. So we'll follow our pleats. And here we have the section where the shield will be. But for now, it's just like 2 unit flaps. So from the hand, I think we have one more finger to do. One more finger. So when you're done with this finger structure, right, we only did the inside diamonds. You should have 3 flaps that are kind of towards the edge. Let me make this a little bit cleaner. And I'm going to go on the other side so I can make it a little bit better. There we go. Sometimes the paper, it kind of like traps itself in the crease. So you just have to go from the other side to make it a little bit cleaner, get it unstuck. Okay, so the finger structure for now should only have 1, 2, 3 flaps. And then it goes down. And there'll be more formed later from the edge units. And how far does this go down? This only goes down 2 units, so not much before it goes back up. So it's starting to go back up this way. If you look at the crease pattern, that's what I notice. And here's the start of our shield. And again, it's like a 2 unit zigzag. So it makes this flap, and then it'll come back up again and make another flap. You can see the pre-creases here, like this. So here's the other flap, collapsing. Like this. Here's our second flap. Right, and then we fold down. And so what we have here with the hinge is we have our hand. We have the start of the shield. And then this will go down and form more of our arm. But again, this doesn't exactly meet the center yet. We have these extra flaps here that need to be folded. So we're going to collapse that accordingly. We're going to look at this side, see where this flap is, start to grab it. Then look at this side and notice that, okay, this needs to fold up like this. Right, so now our pre-creases are going out that way. Like this. And as we do it on this side, we can fix the pre-creases on the other side. And once we're here where it matches the other side, it feels really easy because you can just grab it and pinch it. And then you can keep following our pre-creases down. This one goes down. If you look here, we have the zigzag over here. So that's what's happening. So here's our first zigzag on the edge. And then we have our second. Like that. And opposing our second zigzag, we have the start of another flap, which is connected on the other side. So look for those pre-creases and it'll push upwards. And then once we have it, we can pinch on it like this. And remember what we did is we kind of held the flaps that we created and made sure to stretch them with those pre-creases before collapsing it down. And that ensures nothing gets crumpled. Now all the hinges are in the correct spot. And again, some stuff on the other side might have unfolded. So you want to make sure that everything's cleaned up on both sides. And this is looking very good. We've got a lot of flaps over here for the arm. This becomes the shoulders on both sides. Then we have all these flaps for the torso armor and the waist over here and the legs. And then in the face, we have a bunch of flaps, which will be used for the helmet. And then we have this, which is a spike for the helmet. And then two smaller spikes on the back, also for the helmet. Over there. And it's all looking pretty good so far. So this is like the general structure collapse. Now we're slowly going to work on doing the shield transition units as well as the sword transition units. And then we'll do like all these zigzags that we have. We'll collapse the structures next to them. And then do the fingers. And that'll be the collapse. So let's start with the sword. All right, so now we're looking at the crease pattern with all the creases, just because we're going to need some of these. And this is for the sword collapse. Again, we already did this kind of when we pre-creased it. So it's nothing too tricky. We are going to be relying a lot on our pre-creases. But I have the crease pattern here just to show. So the first thing to note is that this first grid line, we're going to keep this folded for the most part on both sides. But the next valley over here, so the second grid line fold, we're not really going to be using that because we're going to be folding along this half grid line that we folded, which is a valley, and that should already be there, and it's this right here. And I'm gonna start putting that in place and just unfolding the grid on the other side. So this kind of will open up on this side for now. Almost like a, unwrap kind of like this. And it's not going to lie flat. We're just going to leave it like this for now. Same thing on this side. It's not really flat yet. And this is so that we can get that squash that we had pre-creased before. So just kind of, I'm just popping it open a little bit. We don't really have to squash it actually because we have the pre-creases. And this opens up. And so far this is good. And the next area is where we're going to have the transition units. So the first transition unit comes from like here is the top of the point, and then like 2 units farther is where it transitions. So if we just like recollapse part of this, and then we have this section. What happens here is we're going to be looking for our other pre-crease we made, which helps us to terminate this transition. And I'm looking for it here. Here it is. I found it. So it's this mountain fold right here. And we want to reinforce that like that. And if we fold everything back together with this mountain folded, it is going to allow us to transition out that unit. So basically I have this folded mountain, and then I'm pushing the grid line back into place here, and essentially just allowing the paper to like find where it kind of naturally makes another new crease so that I can lay this flat. So there's really not too much to the transition. It's just as long as it's on the inside, there'll be some sort of diagonal fold adjacent to the pre-crease we made that lets it fold down. There is like a really nice way to do it, but like for teaching purposes, that's all we're going to do. Now, on this side, it's kind of similar. We just have a crease, which we actually pre-creased this before. It's basically a valley fold from the corner up top here, inside here, like this. And this will just always be laying flat this direction. So that kind of naturally folds like that. We have this, and basically this will make our wide sword like this. Now it may feel a little bit thick on this side, but that's okay. It kind of just makes the center a little bit thicker. And if you really wanted to, I believe there's a way to like unwrap this side and like close sync here so that the edge unit here is clean. So basically I just unwrapped it and close synced it in. Makes it a little bit cleaner. And on the other side, I don't think there's anything to cover that transition much, but yeah, I don't think so. But that's okay. There might be like you unwrap it the other direction and it's a little bit cleaner, but it's not that huge of a detail. Okay, so that's our sword. And basically from here, we have on the top, we have the fingers, and on the bottom, we have the hilt. And so what we're going to do is we're going to grab the sword and the hilt. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees while we're holding onto it. And that will turn our sword 90 degrees so that now the hand is like holding the sword like that. Now, obviously we're going to have to collapse our fingers first, but we're just doing this so we crease in the, swivel fold transition so it can start to stay. And that's the start of the sword. All right, so let's begin on the shield. And I want you to pay attention to these 2 points, as well as on our crease pattern. You're going to notice these transitions. It's not anything too crazy. I'm going to adjust it over to the Mountain Valley version because we kind of just need to outline the mountain folds, and then the rest kind of falls into place. Now from here you can see, right, we have these ridges. We're just going to focus on this point for now, and then these are all hinges, so we don't even have to worry about that. But we are going to concern ourselves with what's between these points. So find these 2 points on the shield arm here, and we are just going to gently open up the layers so we can then fold along our new creases. And if I open it up like this, we can see our creases here that go to the point. And we also see that we have this long mountain fold, which is already in place. And so from here, what I'm going to start with is this like across 1 up 2 mountain fold. I'm just going to make sure that is a strong mountain fold, as well as now we just have a regular 1 unit on the grid crease. And I'm going to just, fold in the one next to it too. We don't need to fold this full unit out for now, but it's going to be there. So we can essentially have that as like a water bomb or just like a flap to hang on to like that. All right. So now that we have that in place, we have some more pre-creases that go down there. We also have another pre-crease. That's going to be a mountain, and it goes from the point and kind of goes like up in a half. It's kind of like a weird one that we might not be able to see too well. But it's like it's somewhere along there. And then we have this valley fold. So these valley folds are what's going to be a little bit more difficult to crease. But if you grab this pleat right here, and now I'm looking at where my pre-crease is, you can kind of flip that into a valley. And also another valley that's going to happen is like between here, and this one goes kind of far and out wide. We see the pre-crease out there. So kind of same thing is I'm using like my fingernail and the other pleats over here to kind of guide that pre-crease into place. Right. And as we have those and we start to piece it back together, we will get more of the collapse. And so let me try to collapse this part down. Okay, it won't collapse all the way yet, but we are able to now kind of start working on these creases that have been flipped, like such. We also have, so this is where it's going to hinge out. I think once we collapse it, these hinges, you can see how over here, it's starting to swivel on its own like this. That is how the swivel works, out to the side like that through the layers, but we might need to collapse a little bit more before we get to that. Let's just look at the other side and try to get these pre-creases good to go. I think we can see it a little bit better on this side. We have this mountain fold, which is better defined, and we have this valley under here. And this should kind of line up with that mountain. And then on this side, we have our other valley fold that goes down this way. And this will kind of start to meet up here. Like this. And then here is where we'll have the hinge of everything that kind of swivels outwards. Let's actually complete the flaps over here. I think it might help us collapse the whole thing down, but there's not too much to go. So if we open this up, we can fold the other flaps, and these are just regular flaps that I'm following on the pre-creases over here. They're just 2x2 unit diamonds. Okay, so now these flaps are together. Actually, all 3 flaps are together. And so that will let everything kind of collapse like this. And that way, when we go to close this up, that last set of swivel folds will be okay. So I'm just refilming this part a little bit to make it a little bit easier to explain. But now that we have these points all collapsed together, we can hold them together like this. And what I'm going to do is we have our hand layers here and the rest of our arm here. I'm going to make sure I fold these together and hold them like this. And then I'm going to hold these points that we made, these flaps, and hold them together like this as well. And we've kind of, reinforced these mountain creases, and I'm going to push it to collapse like this so that it's along the mountain fold. And the result of squeezing it together like this is it's not going to be perfect, but the layers under here are going to hinge. Now, it's going to hinge somewhere. It's not going to be perfectly on the grid. You can try to get it on the grid if you can. But essentially, we just want this shape to be present. And then you're going to fold down along the hinge so that this whole structure can be collapsed together like this. And once it's like this, you should be able to, fold it along a hinge both ways around arm. There is this like weird bit that sticks out like that, but that's just how it's gonna be. What we can do now though is if we valley fold up, we have one of these flaps that sticks up like this. And what you're going to want to do is if you have any leftover parts like that, that is from us collapsing the flaps earlier. We just want that to kind of slide in a little bit more. So it means some paper is probably stuck, but you're going to want to fold that in. Just make sure everything's okay. And this is essentially the structure for the shield, like this. These will be some spikes. And then later on, we are going to use this to swivel underneath for the rest of the shield. And we'll do that into shaping. But yeah, it's not anything too crazy. As long as you can roughly get to this shape, you're good to go. All right, so now we can continue on to the rest of the collapse. All right, so we are now going to be collapsing these little zigzag areas. So there's quite a few of them. These ones are for the shoulder. They're just 2 units long. These ones are a bit longer. They're 3 units. This is for the waist. This one is also 3 units. It's for the knee. And they all pretty much collapse the same. So we're just going to do them all. It's nothing hard or anything. And I have the crease pattern up there. But there is kind of a specific way that they collapse. It's not going to collapse exactly flat folding. So let's find where those pre-creases are with this one. It goes out pretty far. And I think I have some extra creases here that I might have, accidentally put in from before. But it's okay. Okay, so we see our pre-creases. Here's the zigzags. Here we go here. Obviously, it goes to the very edge. And then these zigzags go in. Okay, and so the start one is right here. And what I mean by the start one is this one is the one that's closest to this structure. So I'm going to refold the pleats for the zigzags so we don't lose any of that. And I'm going to remember this is where that starts. Normally I like to start inside and go outwards. This time I'm going to start outwards and go in just for this one so we can see how it's done, and then we'll go from there. But this one's going to collapse like a normal Elias stretch. So I find my flaps over here. And you're just going to want to pay attention to the crease pattern or your pre-creases to understand how this works, because this has a lot of 1-unit flaps that we zigzag across. So here's like the first one. There's another one. And this is for the pleats of the shoulders. And now as I'm collapsing, what you're seeing me do is instead of leaving it parachute like this, I'm closing it so that these pleats are together, and this makes it easier to collapse it down like this. I think we have a few more of these single unit pleats all in a row. Both sides. Just like that. And we got one more here. All right, so that's starting to collapse. Now we have it go to a point like this. And then this goes out to a broader point like this. Now what this looks like is a river meander when the final point is right here. And in a river meander, normally what would happen is this would, translate inside, but we are not actually doing that. So you can see the pre-crease here. It goes here and here. Normally this would form another, just like a 2-unit flap like this. We're not going to do that actually. We are going to fold that pleat on top of these other two to recollapse it. Okay, so those pleats are lined up like they were before. And then let's recollapse this area. We do want this outside one. I accidentally unfolded it. Okay, like this. And what I'm using these 2-unit flaps for that made the zigzag is actually more like a transition unit. So I'm widening it and collapsing it along with the rest of these flaps, and essentially using like a rabbit ear. It'll close this unit back up. So imagine a rabbit ear here and here. And what you'll see is that now this clump of flaps and pleats is basically like 90 degrees or perpendicular to the axis of the body, right? So instead of being flaps that are like along the axis, or flaps that are inside the layers, these ones are out to the side like this. And so like that's the whole premise of this structure. And because it's sitting on the top or on the side like this, it adds that 3D-ness where it looks like it's sitting on top of our layers. So that would be, you know, this one. And like you can see how the arm layer is kind of behind it, but because it sits on it like this, it's, you know, it's just like this. We're actually not done with the shoulder pad. I was looking at my fold of it, and I realized there's actually 2 spikes, right? 2 spikes here. How do we get 2 spikes? And I think what I had forgotten to add to this crease pattern is that we actually have space for like one more flap in here. And I know what you're thinking, like it might look weird because it's like crossing like this. But that's technically, like this technically works. It's kind of weird how this works, but yeah. So what's nice is we don't really need to like pre-crease this. We can just add it. Essentially, right, this felt pretty thick. We had a lot of layers here. We have enough layers that let's unfold a little bit here and pull out some of these layers towards the top end. Is over here, right? This is where originally we would have the start of another flap here. And in fact, it is the start of our next flap. And you're just going to trust your grid. If you need to pre-crease this in, you can just unfold it a little bit more and then add the pre-crease. But it's just a mountain fold over here to make a water bomb base. It doesn't have to be super pretty. Just like close enough. So I'm adding that crease in that way. Adding it to the other side. And then collapsing it like a water bomb base. Or just like a regular flap. And then the rest of the flaps here. So this one can fold up. And then what's left is we have still this 1 unit flap that's wide like this. And then over along here, we can fold that rabbit ear back in. And this time there's less layers, so it should be a little bit easier to muster. Let's just put it back in this exact same configuration. And we have the 2 longer flaps, and then these short pleats, including the one at the end, we're going to turn later in shaping into these pleats around the shoulder here, and these extra 2 little spikes like that. But yeah, that'll be in shaping. So just that. Because that one was not necessarily like on the crease pattern, let's do the other side so that we can do the same thing. And basically, if we're looking at the crease pattern, again, I am just doing something like this, basically adding this like that. Right, so we're just continuing on, but it's remotely the same idea. So now what we can do is, because we know we're going all the way to here, which is where the structure of our zigzag was, we can actually just start unfolding from here. And we can see actually our pre-creases here. That's where they start. And then what we need to add is just extending the mountain fold out to pre-crease it in these directions, like this. And if you want, you can add it this way. You don't really need to do this. This will kind of automatically fold in, but we have that. You can even start collapsing from here now as we're opening up the layers. just to start it. But it might be easier to just open up the layers and do it like we did before. Yeah, let's just open up the layers and then we'll go inwards. We'll parachute it a little bit, but it'll be a little bit easier to keep track of everything. So we've opened everything up. I'm looking for my edge pre-creases. They're right here. There we go. We're going to start the first flap like this. And then here we get to the start of our zigzag pre-creases, which make these 1 unit pleats or 1 unit flaps. As it flaps down. Right, here's one. We got another one. Now we have another collapse that goes into one of our longer points. Like this. And then we have our next point to collapse, which this will then continue into that new flap we just pre-creased before we unwrapped everything. That. Then that brings us to this area of our zigzag creases, which we actually can just treat as that 1 unit flap. And then now we have the rabbit ear underneath it to close up that layer and let it sit on top of everything else. So get that rabbit ear. That. There we go. In place. And there we have our second shoulder. And we've got our 2 shoulder pads like this. Right. I probably made that collapse a little bit more confusing than it had to be, mostly because I haven't done this in a while, but it's not too bad. It's just like a regular collapse, except it like rabbit ears out to essentially form a new axis out to the side. Okay, so we've done that one. Let's move on to the ones by the leg. They pretty much operate the same way. Or this one's on the waistcoat, but there's a little bit more room for us to play around with. So let's try this one. Okay, so we are now working on the one by the waist. Here we go. This one has like a slightly bigger flap on one of them. So we can open up layers pretty much in the same manner. Carefully. I was a little bit not careful. We go just about to the end here. Now, these flaps remain in mountain, so there'll be one, edge here, and this is what makes our axis that widens out like this. So just note that that's how far we're going. And you can just look at the pre-creases I think we might even have one more flap that sits on top. You know, potentially we could add another layer, but we don't really need to. Let's give me something like this. And now we have our creases all ready to go. Once again, I think I'm just going to start from the edge on these, just because it's easier to show and keep track. The new axis that we're working on is right here, so I'm going to make sure these grid lines are just mountain. It's a little bit easier, and then I'm looking for my pre-creases on the edge, which is right here. I can start. This one starts with a 1 unit flap. So get the edge clean, and start on the next flap. Just following our pre-creases. And once we have the next one in, it'll be a little bit easier to get our edge flap to obey. There you go. Now it's nicely set in. Once again, with these layers, to collapse a little bit easier, I'm kind of holding it this way, and then that lets me like squeeze it down. Okay, so the next flap we have is a little bit longer. It's actually 3 units long. So it ends up here. Let's start those, and then allow it to collapse. I'm going to do both sides. I'm going to do the trick where I squeeze this way to allow us to fold up all the layers together. Like this. And then we can finish off the collapse over here. It's just the paper is a little bit stuck. Find our pre-creases. There you go. So now we have this flap. And then once again, we have it like this. Now, this time the structure is a little bit different. So it's not necessarily a rabbit ear. It's more these layers are swiveling underneath like this. So it's got like a swivel fold over here. And then on top, it also does that swivel fold, but this one really won't like to lay flat. So like everything kind of swivels out and down, but the key is to make it face downwards, so point downwards. So our longer flaps here are pointing towards our legs, like this. Right. And we'll use these for shaping out stuff later. So let's actually just stay on this side so I can show the last one, or I guess the last 2, and then I'll just have you repeat it on the other side. It'll save some time in this tutorial. Okay, so staying on this side, these last 2 are special because they're actually better than the rest. They actually maintain their like 3 unit structures. And that basically gives some river for us to like move it up and down and swivel it and shape it a little bit easier on top of the leg. Now, ideally, I planned this design to that all of these had that extra river, but I ran out of space and it still works. It's just like a little bit more clunky. But you'll see what happens here with these is that they will actually be sitting on top of the layers in this direction. So what we'll be doing is actually like fully closing up the legs later on, and it makes it cool to shape. Nothing too crazy there. Let's start with this one that has more layers, and the one that has more layers is actually on the bottom here. So over here is the bottom edge. And so I'm going to unfold these layers, except for this top one. So similar to on the waist, we leave at least one layer of this mountain fold because we don't have any pre-creases going there, and then we open up the rest and we can see our pre-creases. We can see our axis, and then we can start collapsing. Once again, starting along the edge. Like this. And the edge one's a little bit tricky, and what's also tricky is my other leg is like getting inside of the collapse. So just make sure, if you feel like something's weird, it's probably one of your legs or arms is getting trapped. But we have one flap, and then next we can fold the next one, and the next one is just a 1 unit flap, so it's a little bit shorter. Just try to get it clean. Again, you see how I'm holding these together like this in order to let it collapse a little bit easier. We have another 1 unit flap here before it finishes off. Here. Let's get this collapse a little bit cleaner. There we go. And so now we are at the edge where previously we had that swivel thing. Again, these ones will kind of swivel, but what we're going to do in order to get it to swivel is, see, we have this extra river now, this extra river space. So we can actually, let's like fold it towards the body and then just make a like mountain fold. Swivel it to the side, like this. Right, like this. So now it's just out to the side like that. And what we're able to do now is we can actually probably fold along both of these swivels at the same time and let it like fold down like this, almost in half. Like that, right? And what we have here now is our knee armor, which has some flaps that can fold up and down. Let's fold them up for now. But the direction of this axis is like on top, right? So we have 2 units out wide this way, or if we look at it flat this way, it's like sticking out to the side, right? Isn't that kind of weird? A little tricky? But that's how the leg armor looks so 3D. It makes it really nice for shaping. It's for one, those weird swivel things naturally kind of try to round it, and it sits over the structure. Okay, so now we just have one more. This one's like way easier on the edge. It's basically the same thing, except we only have a 1 unit flap. I'm going to open up the edge. Oop, that's the wrong one. Over here. It's right over here. We don't even have that zigzag. We only have just this 1 unit. So 1 unit flap towards the edge like this. But it kind of operates the same way. Is now that we have this folded up like that, we have this one, which we fold towards the foot. We valley out like this. And then we can actually spread a layer to the side so that we can open up our 1 unit flap like a another one. So let's start with opening it up. Basically, we have a rabbit ear in here underneath it. Like this. So we have this shape. And it fits around like this. I know this is kind of confusing. We just need to collapse these flaps and we'll get into more of it in the shaping. But it looks something like this. Right? And you know, when I'm looking at this structure here, I think what we can even do is, instead of leaving it like this, we can like open up the layer. Maybe I don't do this. Maybe I don't do that. Okay, never mind. Don't do that. We're gonna just leave it like this. It just like swivels out and like valley folds to the side and then goes on top of the layer. Right. Okay, so I know this is kind of confusing. Just collapse them like it shows on the crease pattern, and then literally like when this is collapsed, it's like this. Do like a rabbit ear underneath the hinge, so it lets this flap fold down. And then while it's against the leg flat, we can just valley fold it so that now it's over it instead. Or I think I valley fold the other way so that it's over on the other side. One or the other. Yeah, like that. Right. Okay, so go ahead and collapse it on the other side. I was so sorry. This design's like, it's a little different in the collapse, a little bit scuffed, but I promise you the shaping, it makes it worth it. Okay, so go ahead and try that on the other side. All right, so we are done with both sides of these like little armor plates sticking out to the side. We got the legs, we got the waist, we got the shoulders. Now we're just going to be collapsing the rest of the structures shown on the crease pattern that we don't have yet. We're going to start with the waistcoat. So that's these two flaps right here. And on our crease pattern, I've pulled it up, just this bottom middle area. And it's these two diamonds along the edge. This is very straightforward. It's, you know, pretty much just a regular flap. So not too much to explain. It is maybe just a little bit, you know, dexterous, because it is a large flap and it's going to have to tuck in with the middle flap, but it's not too hard. Now, when you unfold the layers, the one thing you'll notice is, right, we have the flat edge over here and the flap starts probably not that far. There's a gap. It starts over here. So just so you know, this is how it works. We have a flat edge and then the flap starts. Nothing too crazy. And this flap will just go to the edge so we can just start collapsing towards the edge to find our other pre-crease, which is right here. And collapse this side, and then we're going to collapse the other side. And actually, I don't think folding it into the middle flap will be that much of a problem because of the way the structure is. It'll kind of sit nicely on top. We'll just get our pre-creases going, and then we can finish off the collapse here. Like this. All right, and then I'm just going to keep these layers together so I can valley fold the new flap up to the top and then wrap it around our existing waistcoat flap. And from there, I'm just going to let it settle down like this. So it looks almost just like it was before. Okay, we're going to do the other side really quickly. Pull out this layer and then pull out some layers towards the edge. And try not to trap the other flap while we do this. Then we can start to collapse like this. Fold along the grid line until we find our pre-crease. And then collapse on the pre-creases like this. And then the other side. Like that. Now that's collapsed, I'm going to press it tight together in the axis so we can valley fold this flap up cleanly into the other flap and then just wrap it around like that. Like that. I trapped some of my paper, so I'll make it a little bit cleaner. Wrap it around. Make sure the layers are together. And it will go back into the waistcoat like that. And it'll be all ready for us to shape. Okay, so we have those flaps done. Now we have two over here that's like slightly harder. It's just one collapse that forms two flaps, and they're both middle flaps. They happen to be in the torso here. So we have our head structure with our neck. And then we have like this 3-unit flap right here. This is the one that's we have to turn into the collapse. So for this one, I believe we also have, this might actually be incorrect. No, it is correct. Okay, so this one's a little bit tricky because if you notice the, creases on this side, they're like that same structure as what we had before on the waistcoat. So there's not like we can't do like the water bomb at the top. We would have to go in, and that would shorten the flap. Now the key to this is the crease pattern isn't wrong. It's just we have to invert this flap first, and then we collapse the two flaps together after it's inverted. So we're going to be inverting this flap. It's nothing too crazy. When we invert flaps, we don't actually have to invert that many creases. And this one is closer to the top, so it's not too bad. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the torso like this. It's actually pretty much just like 2 to 4 creases we actually have to invert. And I'm just going to try to press this flap through without unfolding too much because we're going to be using mostly the same creases actually. Out here. And what I'm really looking for is the creases that will now be mountains on this side when it's inverted that structured our flap in the first place. So I found this one here and here. And then on the other side, it's right here. And we have some layers that were tucked in the middle. We can open those up for now because we're going to collapse with them while it's inverted. But the key thing is to make sure you find your pre-creases, which were collapsed on the other side already. And so I found them here. And again, this is still using the same direction of creases we had previously. Nothing has really flipped directions or anything. We've just pushed a flap through all the way. And now that we have this, we can just treat collapsing it like a regular middle flap. You can even see it starting. So I already have some pre-creases that run to the edge here, and we can now finish off that collapse. So for these ones, here you go. That's our pre-creases, and it makes that water bomb point of the flap like that. And we have the other side. And, you know, I'm just reaching through the flap to kind of poke some of these pre-creases into place. That might help you to get this intact. But once you have your points that are like the water bomb, like this. So I've got up both sides. These are just following the pre-creases. We can now collapse it like a middle flap back together. And because this is a middle flap, these two, oh, here we go. I had a layer stuck. Okay, so these two flaps, how they collapse is the center line between them is going to be mountain, which means our hinges are going to be faced that way. So I'm going to take one, move it as close to the middle as possible, and mountain fold it like this. And you can start to get some of those creases in the middle hinged like that. And then same thing on the other side. Just get it as close to the middle as you can, and then mountain fold it. Start to get some of those hinges collapsed until you can basically hold both of the flaps together like this. And at this point, they are, you know, almost all collapsed. And what you're going to want to do is just check from the front to see if there's anything that has kind of gone wonky or weird. So my arms here have started to unfold themselves. So I'm going to make sure that these stay collapsed. So see, it kind of unfolded here. So I'm going to put it back to the way it was collapsed before, while trying not to undo anything I did on the other side. And I know it's going to be a little bit weird, but eventually this will collapse down pretty nicely. The flaps that will get a little bit shorter are the ones in the back, because it is consuming some space to get that transition out. But if it looks a little bit messy, it's okay. But you want this seam here. This is the seam where those flaps are poking through. You want it to try to get it as clean as possible, or as collapsed as possible. And that'll happen just by folding down. Now, I think one thing we can do for now that'll help is, so this flap here, this will be about 2 units long. So just try to maintain that. But we can start doing the rabbit ear for the head. And so here's our neck. And if I squeeze the layers of the neck together, you can see how to push it towards our chest, it forms a rabbit ear like that. And when we have that rabbit ear, it actually makes it easier for these back flaps to collapse in, and it will swing our arms out to the side a little bit. And this is how the neck and the arms are going to be rotated in the finished model anyways. If you folded head empty, this is how it is. Or if you folded the sword and shield tutorial, this rabbit ear does kind of the same thing for the neck. And that's getting a little bit better like that. So now we have these two. These two flaps are mostly just to close out the back a little bit, to provide something in the back that it's not just fully open. But you don't have to worry about those two too much. All right. And then with that rabbit ear on the bottom, now we have one for the hinge at the top of the neck. So I also want you to complete the rabbit ear for the neck up top. And I can't exactly remember which, it might actually not be on that one. So it might be 2 units down. So it's this right here is where the second rabbit ear will go. Like that. And like this. Yeah, that's right. That way we have a 1 unit neck. And so I'm completing the rabbit ear by just strengthening it from the back. And that kind of helps hold it into place. And what I like to do is I like to pinch like this. And then just like kind of round out the head around my fingers. And that really helps lock the neck into place. You can see that everything is now relatively holding together. And that is those chest flaps. I know it's a little bit weird, a little bit scuffed, but it's not too hard to collapse down. It's just a lot going on at once. Okay, the last thing we have to do is for the head, there are some flaps to collapse towards the top that will turn into the helmet spikes. So let's do that. So the head flaps we're looking at are just the top 2 single unit flaps that we see here. In total, there's like 4. We're just doing the top 2. Now, this is a little bit strange because there is really not that much paper to work with. So a lot of times I'll just open up from the back and unfold both layers at once. And this will give us a little bit of space. There is a way to kind of do it in a sequence, but I just find it kind of annoying because of how much stuff is going on. But from here, you can see the diamonds that we use to pre-crease. And we are just turning these into 1 unit flaps. The sequence way is to treat it like a square twist. And if you want to do it that way, essentially what you have to do is kind of like uncollapse one of them just to treat and like leave the other 1 unit flaps pushed down so that there's enough out of the way for you to collapse this. And you start treating it like a square twist just to get the flaps collapsed, and then you can valley fold it into the other flap, and then it's kind of out of the way. And so I think that's what we're going to try is from the center, I'm just like folding one way to the right, and that gives me a little bit of space to fold along our pre-creases here until it's like almost flat. Then I can valley fold up together and then refold that flap, and that little point is now tucked in to the flap. So now if we do the second one, I have to unfold the layer on this side so we can see the creases. And this time I am folding this flap over to the left and just swiveling everything down until I can collapse along that diamond that's pre-creased. Once I have that diamond collapsed, I can valley fold this tip up into that flap and then just valley fold that layer over. So now we have the top one done. We need to do the one that's right below it. Now, the one we did right below it, we actually unfolded or uncollapsed to give us that amount of space. So now we have to recollapse it and then fold those points in. So let me recollapse that flap. And I think in order to do a very similar sequence of treating it like a square twist collapse, we are going to uncollapse this 1 unit flap below. So to uncollapse it, you can just pull it straight out, stretch it, and that'll do the trick. And we can do something similar. So now for this first one, I'm going to open up the layer from the back. That way we can see our pre-creases. And we want to try not to unfold that top layer. And that's the tricky part. So we have our pre-creases here. We can do the same thing. We're valley folding over to the side so that we can square twist it, which will help us collapse along our pre-creases. Now, my pre-creases are not that great, so there you go. A little bit tricky to find. And then once we have that in place, we can valley fold it up into the layer and fold that tip back. And I had to do that a little bit more as one move instead of two moves, just because there's a lot going on already in the head. But once it is collapsed, then you have the option of cleaning up some of the creases by just looking at it and opening it up. Make sure the points are relatively precise. Doesn't have to be perfect at all. And now we just have one more. So open to the right. We're gonna pull out the layer here with this flap gently, and then we can start our square twist. Like this, pop it out, try to get it on the pre-creases. Okay, so now it's popped out a little bit. Fold to the left, let it open up like a square twist. Once it is, valley fold the corner up, and then fold it back. And there we have our cluster of 1 unit flaps. And now all we have to do is put back that 1 unit flap that we uncollapsed, and I'm just kind of reaching in between the layers and poking it back. It's already been collapsed and the pre-creases are there, so it should be pretty easy to find it and just push it back into place like that. All right. If not, you can like do it a little bit more carefully. Look for the pre-creases that had existed before and put it back. But I don't think anyone's gonna have a problem with that. And there we have it. That's the head. It's not too complex. There's a lot of flaps, and if you brute force it, it could be very difficult to get those collapsed. But if you do it with a slight sequence, it's really not too bad. Collapse that back for the neck. There you go. All right, and the very, very last thing we're going to do in this tutorial are the fingers. They're a little bit different on each side, but they are very normal. If you folded any of my models with swords or humans, you've probably done this. You've probably done both. So I'll go through this very fast. The first hand we're going to do is on the sword hand. And I know previously we had swiveled the sword like this, right? Now I am going to just swivel it back. So undo that swivel just for now, just so we have access to the hand. And the hand flap is the one that's pointing up towards the direction of the head. And here we're going to pre-crease our fingers by just opening the middle of this flap and squashing the corner down here like this. You can press together. I also like to, while it's squash folded, just put this valley fold back like that. And that really pre-creases them. Then from here, it's just 1 unit flaps that we are collapsing. So however you prefer to do this, I like to do them one at a time from closest to the original structure outwards, and that's because I can just fold the layers like this and then just kind of push them into the hand each time. So that was one. Here's another one. In this center line between them all, I just treat as a mountain for now. And that lets me collapse each flap individually like this. Very sequentially, and you don't have to parachute too much, and it's more like doing squash folds the whole way down. Squash fold, petal fold. There we go. You can fold back the valley, and there we have our set of fingers. Now to complete the fingers, we're going to thin them by angle bisectoring. And so on each side, so I'm going to start the angle bisector like this. Right? Now the next one I'm going to fold exact same way. But after I fold it, I'm going to make sure that the layers are even by opening up the layer and making sure that valley fold tucks in like that. By doing this, we're going to be able to stretch out each finger while they're thinned without having to sink fold it. So I'm going to do that for the rest of the finger flaps, which is not many. And the very last one is actually just connected to the last finger, in which we don't really need to do this process. So I believe we just have one more bisector to do. And then at least on this side, this one up here, you can just valley fold it inwards, but we have this connection thing here. What I like to do is actually, I just open it up and I squash it. In the squash fold, I don't really care about it because it's going to tuck in a lot. So I'm just squash folding it to kind of thin the finger and distribute the layers relatively evenly. Let's actually zoom in a little bit closer for these next ones. So that's one side. On the other side, it's the exact same thing where you're valley folding towards the edge like this. And then the next one, you do the same thing, except then you adjust the layers so it tucks behind like this. Now, if you're really confident with your folding, you don't even have to fold it over. You can just open up the layer like this and fold the bisector inside. So you can do that too if you'd like. Saves like a couple of movements, but it also helps when you get deeper into fingers. There'll be more thickness, so sometimes pre-creasing over the top of all those layers just isn't fun. So especially for this last one, I like to do that. And that was our fourth one. So now we are on the squash fold here. And this squash fold is attached to this other one. So something you could do is do like a double spread sink, and that works. Or you can just try to squash it. And again, like I said, it doesn't matter too much. To be fancy, I'm going to do a double spread sink here just because why not, right? It's going to make this finger like a little bit wider, but you can just valley fold it in. So there's a double spread sink. Fold it back up. Like this. And now what we can do is, because we've done it this way, we can start to spread out our fingers. And I like to spread out starting from the inner one first. And this one's going to be our thumb. So this one's going to spread the most out. You just want to gently pull it. You don't want to rip the paper. It should pull out freely, but then if you squash back down, you'll feel where like the paper will want to refold, almost like a reverse fold. But here's our thumb. And then now we have the rest of our fingers. And I like to start from the innermost ones because we can kind of set the direction of the palm by doing it like this. If you stretch out the pinky first, if you look at your hand, your wrist is pretty much in line with your pinky. And even if you spread out your fingers, it's still in line and the pinky is just like slightly out. But if you start spreading the pinky first, because it's on the edge flap, it'll actually pull this whole thing out to the side. and it looks kind of weird. So that's why I just like going from the index first and then outwards. It makes it a little bit easier to shape the whole hand and adjust it later. And so now we're here with the pinky. And so the pinky, it is a little bit shorter than the other hands. So I just kind of do more of like a crimp. And again, I want to make sure that most of the palm is still in line. I'm not pulling the whole pinky out. And then that's like the starter for our fingers. And in shaping, we'll thin them out and make them look more like fingers. Once we have that done, we are going to swivel our sword back into place with those fingers all complete, like this. And you'll notice that the handle doesn't exactly fit where the fingers are. Again, in shaping, we're going to push them back a little bit, but if you want a little precursor, essentially we are just going to be mountain folding the handle in half. And then it's like kind of a rabbit ear towards the base of the sword here. And this will help us when we adjust the hand. But you can just kind of get that as like our pre-crease for shaping. All right, so that was one hand. Let's do the other one on the shield arm side. All right, so now we're on the shield arm. We have these 3 flaps out here. From here, we're going to pre-crease them similarly to the other hand, except we have to pre-crease 3. So between each finger, we're going to open up and squash fold to get the finger pre-creased. So that's 1. We have 1 more. 2. Now, if you're a psycho, you can just valley fold all of them at the same time, but I prefer doing it a little bit more precise and doing the squash fold method. It's also kind of fun because I like squash folds. Okay, that's our 3rd one. So now all the fingers are pre-creased. And what we're going to do is unwrap that layer on all 3. So we're going to open it up like this. And you can now see, right, these were the structures for our 3 finger flaps. And then these diamonds on the outside are the pre-creases we made. What we're going to do is, for now, we're just going to be folding along the creases made that are right next to our existing ones, and that makes these water bomb base flaps up top. And we're just going to ignore the rest of it for now and just let it like valley fold down. And by doing this, we can actually collapse this in sequence, and it helps you to make the fingers a little bit more precise, as you can just focus on the tips over here like that. And so we got 1 more over here. And here, if your pre-creasing was a little bit off, then this is where you can fix it. So for my last finger, it was a little bit off, so I'm going to fix it so the finger is a bit sharper, just like the rest. There you go. And now we have this structure where we have these points up to the top like that. And what's left are these areas are right here. That's not exactly collapsed. And all we have to do now is do a squash fold on them. Sorry, not a squash fold, a petal fold. So we're petal folding, and that will allow us to collapse the rest of these. So here, petal fold, and just 1 on each side, which will get it to be like this. All right, we're not exactly done yet. I'm wondering if we should do this collapse now or in shaping. Maybe we'll just do it. We'll do part of it now. All right, yeah, we'll do it now. Okay, so now for the hands, with these pyramids that are on the outside, they're kind of hanging off the side here. What I want you to do is valley fold them in half. So there's 2 of them. Valley folding it in half like this. And let me zoom in again so it's getting smaller. So you're valley folding them to the line like that. And you might expect it. It is a open sink on both of these. Open sync's pretty easy because it's on the edge. You just might have to unfold some of the fingers first to have enough space to complete the open sync. It is a very, very standard open sync. So that's one done. Now we have the other. And so yeah, in order for me to reach the flap, I have to just kind of open up the layers a little bit. That way my finger can fit inside and I can execute the open sync. And like any open sync, I'm pretty much just making mountain folds along the edges and then allowing the rest of the creases to recollapse as I push inward. Like that. Boom. Make sure I didn't trap any paper in the process. So it's relatively precise. And there we have it. Now we need to make some more sink folds. Sink folds and squash folds. So I think there's going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4 sink folds and 2 squash folds. Let's do the squash folds first. Or no, we'll just go chronologically. The outermost one we're going to bisect. And this will be an open sink fold. Oh. Like that. And now open sink. So that's the first open sink. Then the one next to it will be a squash fold. Again, there's some stuff in the way. So this squash fold is mostly just to thin out the finger. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want it to squash down enough that it approximately matches the width of the other finger and it will hinge up in the middle at some direction, but you can see I just matched the edge line of my first finger. And then the next 2 layers will be open sink folds. So I'm going to pre-crease them first, and then I'll sink both. So there's 1, 2, like that. Okay, we got those both pre-creased. Now we're going to open sink fold these ones. Those are a little bit trickier because there's more going on and they're kind of in the middle. But we have half of the creases already creased the right direction, so we just need to crease those 2 valley folds into mountain folds. And then once that's in place, we just let the creases pop into the sink fold on its own. And now I just have to make sure I didn't trap any of the layers, which I did trap this one underneath. So I gotta, okay, there you go, recollapse without trapping any flaps. And that will give us our nice open sink fold. Could be nicer, but there you go. Cleaned it up a little bit. All right, and we got one more on this side that I pre-creased already. One more open sink. Hopefully I wasn't out of frame. I think I was on the corner there. Let me move this way so you can see this sink fold. It's just a sink fold. Nothing too special. Okay, I unfolded a little bit too much, getting those creases going the right direction. Now I am refolding with those pre-creases in mind. Okay. There we go, I fixed it. How's our sync fold looking? Sync fold looks good enough. All right, and then now I'm gonna look from the other side just because it's a little bit easier to see, less things involved. So this side we don't have yet. And on this side, we just have that first sync fold, which is on the edge, so it's a little bit easier. And then after it is the squash fold. So let's pre-crease this sync fold. And then with that sync fold pre-creased, we can actually just go ahead and fold it to the side for now. So we can do the squash fold. Again, squash fold is purely just to thin out the finger. So we're just going to match it to whatever's behind. Doesn't have to be too clean or anything. Squash fold's done. Now we just have that last sync fold. There we go. Fold mountains on the edges. And poke the sync fold in. Boom. And we did it. Mine's not super clean, but that's okay. This will prove that you don't need super clean folding and it'll shape into fingers nicely still. All right, we got a little bit more to do with the fingers. Essentially what's going to happen is we need to move some of these flaps up into the fingers so they're not hanging out to the side like this. And what's going to happen is there's one flap that's hanging out right here. This one is going to fold like 90 degrees, so it's going to be pointed this direction. And by doing that, it will let the rest of these fold in. So for example, let's start here. We're going to take our hand. We have this edgemost flap. We're going to fold it down like this. Next, we are going to valley fold just this one layer on the inside here. And what this is going to do is it's going to spread this sync fold open, right? And now if I want to close this finger back up, so if I want to valley fold it back up, the flap over here is going to have to start valley folding up like that in order for it to close intact. And so we just need to do that now on both sides. So I'm going to do that on this side too. That way it works both sides at the same time. And we'll get that flap locked up. So once again, we start by just folding it down. Then we fold this stuff onto the inside, which will open up that sync fold. Right? Now, when we valley fold the finger back up, it will rotate the other flap about 90 degrees in order for it to close. It basically becomes its own swivel fold like that. And now we have it on both sides. Now on the inside, it's still not fully tucked. So we have these little extra bits sticking out, and all you have to do is just valley fold those between some fingers while it's like this, and it will kind of resolve itself out. So we've got two of them. I did it on one side, and now I need to do it on the other side here. Let's let it valley fold and tuck in like that. This is probably the like least precise I've ever done this set of fingers, but it'll still work. As you can see, we now have our 5 fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have this flap that's sticking up here. This becomes like the top of our hand or a palm. So what I like to do is just outside reverse fold it to kind of get it out of the way and to be more over the palm area of our hand, like this. And if this was a bigger fold, and what you've seen in some of my, might have seen in some of my other tutorials, is I will like squash fold this outwards. And there's like a nice way to do this squash fold, but since my paper is really small, it won't really work. It just kind of works already being outside reverse folded as a palm like this. Maybe, did I even do it on this one? Probably not. On this fold, watch some other tutorials, but as you can see, it's a very minor detail because the shield is covering it for the most. Correctly, so that we can shape it roughly into the hand. Now, once you have your 5 fingers, you can see what I'm doing is I am just reinforcing each finger individually so that if I accidentally made the length cut off a little bit or put it on a weird fold, you can kind of fix it now that it's collapsed. But just like that, and later on the shield will cover it. Now, this thing sticking out here, we're going to do more of this. I think we're just going to leave this for the shaping tutorial, but the simple thing is this basically just opens up and folds down here. Okay, you know what? Let's just do this now because it's so simple. So we have this long flap that's attached to our arm and the shield, and we have it collapsed like this. What we're going to do is in between this layer, I'm going to widen it like that. And what it will do is towards the shield, it'll add a swivel in order for it to lie flat and open like this. Once that's done, I'm now going to like drag the swivel even farther until it lines up with the shield like this. And you can see the swivel poking out a little bit like that. In shaping, we're gonna hide it behind. And then this itself will turn kind of into a pleat for the shield detail. But you're gonna think of these as one unit and try to keep them together as much as you can and have it swiveled with the hand underneath it. All right, so that is the collapse tutorial for the Rathalos armor. You know, you can see pretty much the structure, but it doesn't look like much yet. We're going to turn it into our nice Rathalos armor in the shaping tutorial. That was a lot of collapse. It was actually a bit more than I remembered. So great job if you made it through. And if you'd like to support the channel and get ready for the next tutorial, make sure you drop a subscription. Let me know in the comments if you're folding along with this. And yeah, I appreciate you all so much. I hope you enjoyed this collapse, and I'll see you in the next one.
All this origami got me going kamikaze now.